Well, good morning, everyone. I'm not sure this is quite loud enough, Keith, is it? Can you hear me? Okay, I'm going to whisper now. Can you still hear me? Okay. I'm Lynn Snodgrass, the CEO of the best doggone chamber in the Pacific Northwest. I love Gresham. I love the Gresham area. I love the Gresham Chamber. And I love the fact that we have two amazing leaders with us today that represent Gresham so well. I want to thank our presenting sponsors. We have a new presenting sponsor, Arrow Sanitary Service. Is Josh here? I didn't see him come in. Also, Columbia Bank is a returning sponsor. And Mark, I haven't met Mark yet in person. It took Robin's place, and I'm really looking forward to it. Columbia Bank is a presenting sponsor. The Boeing Company, Portland General Electric, and Persimmon. I also want to thank Gresham-Barlow School District for being our stakeholder sponsor, and you're going to hear from the superintendent from that district in just a few minutes. And MetroEast Community Media, Keith, I said it right. They are our sponsor, and Keith does a great job for us. And what he's doing today is rebroadcast on cable channels, so you can pick up a brochure on your way out, and it'll give you the times, because I'm sure you're going to want to hear this twice, or have your friends hear it, or mothers and fathers in your neighborhood hear it. So I want to right now acknowledge the board members that are in attendance. Our chamber board members, the chair of the Government Affairs Committee, who is responsible for this event, is Warner Allen. Warner, thank you for being here today. And I would also like to acknowledge Kayla Viramontes. There's Kayla. Baby's over there and mom's over there. That says something, doesn't it? And past president, Leslie Parker, sitting next to Kayla. Hi, Leslie. Alex Marcus, our newest board member, is right here. Thank you for being here. And Dr. Scari came back from vacation just for this. Dr. Scari, I'm teasing. You didn't rush back for just this, did you? No, you didn't. Okay, I was right. And we have we have three very prominent elected officials with us today, too. I'd like to, and I'm not sure if this is his first time here or not, but I want to acknowledge my mayor, the mayor of Sandy, Stan Pulliam. Thank you, Mayor, for being here. I didn't recognize you with the beard. I tried to grow one, and it didn't work, but you're doing a really good job. There you go. Council President, Gresham Council President Sue Piazza. Where did Sue go? No, you're not Sue.
Come on.
There she is. She's still working. Yeah, no. Sue would not look good in a beard. But that's the joyous husband. And Jerry Hinton. Jerry is with us as well. There he is, Jerry. We appreciate that. All the volunteer time that all of you, the board members and the elected officials, put into the community is so appreciated. Well, today I'm excited, and I hope you are excited, to have two leaders in our community that are voices for 17,000 kids, and those kids speak 73 different languages, and those two men are in charge of 1,917 teachers. That's a lot of staff. Between them, they oversee 27 buildings plus 4 charter schools. They share the first name. So I'm calling one of them James, and I'm calling the other one the other James, but I haven't decided which one is the other James. Their career paths are very similar. Each started by being a teacher, then a principal, then Deputy Superintendent of Human Resources, both of them, and now Superintendent. While they have similar career paths, they took a different education path. One is a Beaver, and the other is a Wildcat. Oregon State and Linfield. One graduated from the school district he now manages, and the other has deep Hawaiian roots. We're pleased to have Superintendent James Owens from Centennial School District and James Hugh from Gresham-Barlow School District with us today. Each one of them are going to make a separate presentation, and after they're both finished, then that'll be the time for questions. So be sure and jot down your questions that you might have with the first speaker so you remember when they're all done. So first up today is the Centennial High School graduate and Centennial Superintendent James Owens. He went from, his words not mine, an academic to a troublemaker back and forth until he went to high school. There he developed a love for water sports, including being on the Eagles water polo and swim team. He then went to Oregon State and got his bachelor's degree in business. When I looked up information about James, and both these individuals are very private on Google, and I don't do Facebook, so I don't know if they're on Facebook or not. But when I found this article that was from the Outlook, it was an education spotlight, and I'm going to read a piece of it because I think it shares with you who this man is. While at work, Owens' father, James Owens, the superintendent, his father suffered a massive heart attack and was rushed to the hospital. As his father's primary caregiver, Owens decided to take time off to stay with his dad and was at the hospital often. Owens' father was placed in a medical-induced coma and was not expected to survive the ordeal. It was a really rough time, said Owens. I also remember thinking about my situation at work and how unhappy I was doing what I was doing. Owens had frequent hospital visits, and that led to a friendship with one of the janitors at the hospital. And one day that janitor asked Owens what line of work he was in. Owens' answer, didn't register very well with his new hospital friend. I said that I work as a claims adjuster for an insurance company, he said. No, you don't, said the janitor. You're a first-grade teacher. Owens said, laughing, I'm pretty sure I know what I'm doing. And the janitor said, nope, you're a first-grade teacher, and I'm usually right about those kinds of things. Unbeknownst to the janitor, Owens had been thinking about getting into education. The very same day as his conversation with his janitor friend, Owens' father immaculately woke up from the coma and made a full recovery. Whether it was a miracle, the stress of the entire situation, or having the time to reassess his life, Owens decided after that event to get into education. I knew early on that I was interested in the bigger picture of education, said James. I knew that I wanted to be in administration, and that's why I taught kindergarten through 4th grade. I just wanted to have a really good idea of what you each look like. Well, that's who the man is that's going to come up and talk to us today. Welcome to the podium, James Owens, Superintendent of the Centennial Public School District.
There you go. All right, good to see everyone today. Thank you for that kind introduction. My name is James Owens, as Lynn said, from the Centennial School District, where I serve as the superintendent. And as Lynn also said, I'm also an alumni of Centennial High School and have lived most of my life in East County. I grew up in the San Francisco area till I was about 10. But then when we landed in Portland, we ended up in Gresham, just off 181st and Powell. This is my 18th year in the field of education. As Lynn said, I worked as a claims adjuster for an insurance company, have a business degree from Oregon State, and it wasn't until my mid-20s that I learned what I wanted to do with my life.
I'm your tech. There you go.
All right, stand closer, speak louder. So this is my 18th year in education. I taught in the Reynolds School District for 7 years. I wanted to get a position in Centennial School District, but I could not get a job in Centennial School District. So I taught in Reynolds for 7 years. As Lynn said, I taught kindergarten through 4th grade, and then I was able to move over to Centennial, where I've been for the last 11 years as an administrator. I served as the principal of Butler Creek Elementary, and then also as the assistant superintendent and director of human resources when Paul Coakley was a superintendent in Centennial. I did that for 5 years, and this is the second year that I'm serving in my current role. As Lynn noted in her communication to James, Hugh, and me, it's been a few years since the Chambers had a presentation from the school districts, so I'm glad to be here today to share some of the good work that's happening in Centennial. Before I get too far, I wanted to provide some brief information about Centennial. And for whatever reason, the school names are a little bit jogged there, but nevertheless, the district spans Portland and Gresham, and also into Clackamas County, into the Damascus and Happy Valley areas. So it's got a pretty interesting landscape. That big green area that you see on the bottom is Pleasant Valley Elementary School. The school itself isn't that big, but it has a big footprint in terms of the land area. I like to call it the Alaska of our school district, just in terms of it being large and also somewhat remote. Our district boundary is roughly 148th to 182nd. And then on the north side, Stark Street and then down to about Abundant Life Church down near Sunnyside Road on the south side, which may be a little bit surprising to some people. As you might know, if you have driven the back roads towards Clackamas Town Center, there's quite a bit of development on the south side of our district. I believe it has the most developable land in Multnomah County. We serve approximately 5,800 students in 10 schools, and the schools are broken down into 6 elementary, 2 middle schools, a comprehensive high school, and also an online virtual academy serving students in K-12. Centennial, and you can fact check me on this, I'm pretty sure I'm right, is also the largest employer in the district with a workforce of approximately 730 employees. We serve a diverse population of students, and that's different than my time when I was in Centennial as a student. Roughly 4 in 10 students speaking a language other than English at home, representing over 60 different languages. 6 in 10 of our students qualify for free or reduced price meals, which is the indicator that districts use for determining the poverty level. And Centennial is also a global majority district. 60% of students are non-white. And on this slide, you can see the different representations of the racial composition of our students, which are listed actually out of 20 students, which can be considered to be more humanizing than percentages and more similar to thinking about students in a classroom. It's been a busy last couple of years, so I'm grateful for the opportunity to share with you some of the things that we've been working on as a district. James Hugh and I teamed up and decided we would cover 3 topics in common, so hopefully our presentations track somewhat. What I'll cover is how the pandemic has affected schools, the bond projects that are in progress, and finally some details about our strategic planning process that is underway. I'll start by sharing with you some things about how things are going 3 years, believe it or not, into the pandemic. In the fall of 2021, after 17 months of virtual and hybrid learning, Centennial schools returned to providing full-time in-person learning. While this is something that schools had done for decades without second thought, returning to in-person learning in the midst of a global pandemic turned out to be an ambitious undertaking. And one thing I wanted to do with this presentation is not put a shine on everything that's happening in schools and just give you the real dose of the things that we've been experiencing, knowing that there are good things that are happening as well. The pandemic created many challenges for students, parents, teachers, and administrators alike. There have been physical, mental health, and safety concerns. Schools have seen significant staff resignations, as has been the case in many other industries, I imagine maybe yours as well. There were the implementation of numerous new safety layered mitigation protocols, such as social distancing, universal masking, vaccination, contact tracing, ventilation, isolation, and quarantines, which presented a significant challenge. As a result, we were forced to rethink and revise even basic routine operations to deliver education to students. Now we've been back in full-time in-person instruction for another 17 months, and here's what I can report. I'll start by saying last year was rough, and this year things have been on a much more positive trajectory. I'll take a moment to describe in more detail some of the challenges, and I'll also speak to how things are getting back on track. So examples of the challenges that I spoke to already. As I mentioned, there has been an unprecedented shortage of staff across the spectrum of positions, an equally unprecedented shortage of substitute staff, which, as you can imagine, our industry relies on having substitute educators available when staff are absent. Added challenges of contact tracing, quarantine, and isolation, and those things contributed to the staffing shortages that I mentioned. So this resulted in teachers needing to use their preparation time to cover one another's classroom when a colleague was absent. Specialists such as counselors, reading teachers, English language teachers foregoing small group instruction to cover classes. Pulling principals into classrooms, district staff into schools to cover classes and supervision duties. Combining classrooms together when you simply didn't have any more options. And then, which is particularly disruptive for parents, canceling bus routes oftentimes on short notice. To try to combat our staffing and substitute shortages, we used a handful of strategies. These are just a few. Increasing our pay rates for substitute staff, offering hiring and referral incentives, and then also working with our employee unions to reclassify certain positions to higher pay rates, such as bus drivers and those who work in special education positions. It's unusual in a unionized environment to be doing bargaining outside of the normal collective bargaining contract, but that's what we've needed to do to try to address some of the urgent and pressing needs. Our students have gone through a lot during the pandemic, and this has shown up in a variety of ways. These challenges include increased levels of mental health issues, increased levels of violent behavior, particularly at the middle and high school level, and the obvious challenge of learning opportunities that students missed because they were out of physical school for such a long time. In education, this has been phrased as unfinished learning. This is opposed to learning loss. It suggests that as a system, we can dedicate time, attention, and resources to helping students get caught up through a variety of tactics and strategies, rather than students simply losing something that can't be gotten back. As you're likely aware, the federal government provided substantial federal relief dollars to support the continued operation of in-person learning amidst the pandemic, as well as to address the unfinished learning that I mentioned. Some of the ways in which these dollars have been earmarked to support student learning includes, the first bullet point you'll see up there is adding at least one building-based teacher to each school. Given the substitute issues that I mentioned, the building-based teacher, first and foremost, provides a substitute teacher in cases when the teacher is gone and a substitute provider isn't able to come through with a sub. If all of the vacancies are filled for the day, which we're seeing more and more, last year not so much, this year we're seeing that our sub jobs are picked up fairly regularly, then the building-based teacher can provide targeted support to students who benefit from more individualized instruction. A building-based support staff member who serves a similar purpose as the building-based teacher. For the support staff member, their role might be supporting a student with special needs who may need a one-on-one support, or supporting recess and lunch duty supervision. We've also been able to provide robust summer school offerings for students for the past 2 summers to help mitigate the summer slide, as they say, and we intend to continue to do that for the next 2 summers as well. To support the social and emotional learning needs that I'd mentioned, we've been able to do a handful of things. We provided responsive classroom training for all elementary and middle school staffs, and I don't expect you to know what that is, but describing responsive classrooms could be a topic of its own, so maybe I can come back another time and talk about that topic. In attempt to briefly summarize, it's a student-centered approach to both teaching and then also discipline that comprises a set of research-based practices to create safe, joyful, and engaging classroom communities for both students and teachers. We've also dedicated resources to providing social workers at the elementary, middle, and high school levels where we did not have that resource before, and we've also added additional school counselors. I try to see the silver lining in things, and there have been some positives that have come from our experiences during the pandemic. There's many, this is just a couple of them. In the summer of 2020, we established Centennial Virtual Academy, or CVA, which is a fully online K-12 educational option for students, which includes online learning platform and instructors that can help support students as they progress through the platform. The day we opened the enrollment for CVA, it immediately became our 3rd largest school, demonstrating the demand for an option like this. And as you can imagine, if you were to plan this in regular times, it might have taken a year or 2 years, and you still say, we're not ready. We were able to put this together over the summer. Wasn't perfect, still isn't, but it's one of those processes of just getting started and then working through various iterations. Almost 3 years later, we continue to operate CVA, and last year we added a hybrid component where students can continue online learning and then take some courses such as electives in person. So that's something that we see as continuing in perpetuity as we progress through post-pandemic. Another thing we learned during distance learning was the need for students to focus on fewer subjects and to do so more deeply. Overwhelming feedback that we got from students in the spring of 2020, so pandemic hit around March, so around June we did some surveying with students, is that managing the 7-class day schedule that was traditional was very difficult for them to do remotely. So in 2021, while still in distance learning, we transitioned to a quad schedule where students take 4 classes per quarter rather than 7 classes per semester. When we returned to in-person learning last year, students and teachers preferred the experience of fewer classes per day. So this year, Centennial High School introduced a trimester schedule. So instead of 7 periods per day over 2 semesters, students take 5 periods over 3 trimesters. Switching topics, I wanted to share with you the projects that have been done with bond dollars that have been generously provided by the Centennial community as a product of the 2020 Capital Projects Bond that the Chamber gratefully endorsed. In May of 2020, just a couple of months after the onset of the pandemic, Centennial voters passed a $65 million bond to address maintenance needs throughout the district. If you have passed by many of our school buildings recently, you may have noticed construction taking place. Project highlights include, and I'm going to be clipping through here, so you might want to take a look at the slides here, extensive roof repairs throughout the district, which you can see here on this slide some examples of. Tennis court replacement at Centennial High School. The original one was over Bull Run, so we couldn't rebuild it there for a variety of reasons, the Bull Run pipe. New tracks at Oliver and Centennial middle schools, and there will be a new track coming at Centennial High School this summer as well. Extensive flooring and hazard abatement at Pleasant Valley, Oliver, and Centennial Middle School. Gym refinishing at our middle schools and high school. This is a rendering here, but you'll see the construction of gymnasiums for 4 of our elementary schools that don't currently have dedicated gym spaces. Since these buildings were constructed back in the 50s and 60s, classes have needed to share space in what I like to call cafetorinasiums, or multi-purpose spaces, which are trying to run PE, lunch, and assemblies all in the same place, and it's very much a logistical challenge. Extensive repairs of the swimming pool shell, mechanical and filtration systems. That picture doesn't quite do it justice, but it looks really good. Safety and security upgrades, including adding vestibules to the front entrance of each of our schools to enhance student and staff safety. The one you see on the left is still in progress. Repairs and replacements to our fire alarms, intercom systems, security camera and intrusion systems. And then at all schools, I don't have photos of these, lighting and energy improvements, ventilation and mechanical improvements, and site drainage improvements. And despite very challenging construction environment with inflation, supply chain issues, labor shortages, and an extremely wet spring last year in 2022, Centennial is on track to fulfill all of our bond projects on time and on budget. So we're really pleased about that. We hope to have one of those graphics to be able to provide to you here shortly. We'll be taking one of those as an example. Of the $65 million bond, we've also been able to experience nearly $80 million of value as the state provided a $7 million matching grant. We were also able to secure 2 seismic grants worth approximately $2.5 million apiece. One at Pleasant Valley Elementary, where if you've driven past, you may have noticed there have been bricks that have been off the building and replaced. And then also at Powell Butte Elementary, and that project has yet to begin. The Pleasant Valley project is nearly completed. As part of our 2020 bond, Centennial voters supported the conversion of Oliver Elementary School into a middle school. Centennial was one of the last districts in the region with 6th graders still at the elementary school level, so the choice was made to move 6th grade to the middle school level. So now instead of having just 1 middle school for our students, there are 2 for our nearly 1,300 middle level students in our 2 6th through 8th grade middle schools. As a connected process with the bond in the middle school conversion in the last school year, Centennial conducted a comprehensive review of all school attendance boundaries in the district, which is a great undertaking for a first-year superintendent to move all of the boundaries where students attend. That's not always a popular one. To do this, we partnered with Flow Analytics, a local consulting company specializing in data-driven boundary review services. A boundary review committee consisting of parents, school and district administrators, and board liaisons analyzed boundary options, received community feedback, and developed a final recommendation for school board approval. Multiple factors were considered, and a thoughtful transition plan was implemented in satisfying the objectives of the boundary adjustment, which we've been able to roll out this year, and it's been relatively smooth. The final topic I wanted to share about is our strategic planning work. Our current strategic plan, Destination 2023, was established 5 years ago during the 2017-18 school year. Now that we're in 2023, it's the 5th year of our 5-year plan, so it's time for a new plan. And as you know, a lot has changed since 2017. So this year, our district is engaged in a comprehensive strategic planning process. The strategic plan, as may be the case for the industries where you work or the businesses that you have as well, acts as a roadmap for where our school system is headed. For our strategic planning process, there are several teams that are working concurrently. Each is focused on selected aspects or perspectives of the entire strategic planning process. The process has been underway throughout the course of the fall, and the teams consist of a cross-section of stakeholders, including students, family members, representatives from community partnerships, licensed and classified staff, administrators, and school board members. Between our committees and forums, we've had engagement from approximately 325 people. I want to offer a special thank you also to Chamber member Edward Chin from All About Adventure Excursions, who participated in one of our strategic planning teams, and also Bess Willis from Gresham Ford. She wasn't able to participate, but she and I had a pretty good conversation earlier this fall, and I was able to glean some insights from her about ideas to feed into the plan. On this slide, you can see some of our promotional graphics. We have Chief Communications Officer Albert Rosales-Correa here today, and he provided some of the graphics that you'll see there that use for promotion. The primary aim in our process is to align all stakeholders on a shared vision, common goals, and a unified direction for our district's educational efforts for the next 4 years. Our process is being facilitated by an organization called Performance Fact, and they came highly recommended to the Centennial School District for both supporting the strategic planning work, which you can't come up with a great plan, but it's where the rubber hits the road with implementation, and they're good at providing implementation support as well. So we'll see how good the work is this year by how well we do it next year. Alignment is important for optimizing our collective efforts, as our facilitator likes to reference: when your car is out of alignment, when your back is out of alignment, you can still operate, but not optimally. As a component of our strategic planning process, Centennial Schools are also engaged in an equity audit, which is a systematic study of an organization's policies, programs, and practices with the objective of removing programmatic barriers that impede full participation, access, and opportunity for all students, and transforming structures and practices by centering the cultural, socioeconomic, and racial diversity in the school community. For this process, we are partnering with the National Center for Urban School Transformation out of San Diego State University. That is an extensive process. It consists of 2 to 3 day site visits at each school to conduct instructional audits, and that includes observations in every classroom, 360-degree surveys for students, staff, and families, focus groups, and a policy and practices review. Following these steps, a report of findings in the form of an equity report for each school and the district is created, which assists in developing the continuous improvement plans for the schools and district, and then with developing key metrics for ongoing monitoring. So that's just a few updates for what has been happening in Centennial. I could go on more detail, or I could cover many more topics, but I'll leave it there for today. And I appreciate the invitation. And then I believe as soon as Superintendent Hugh is finished, welcome any questions that you might have as well. Thank you.
I wanted to acknowledge that the Gresham Chamber did enthusiastically support Centennial as well as Gresham-Barlow bonds. We don't just rubber stamp tax increases for kids. We do the deep dive into what's going on. They also invited us to be at the table with them as they were going through the process from a lens of business and lens of community. So I appreciate the involvement ahead of time, but we did enthusiastically help. And it's so nice to win, you know? Good job, both of you. I have 7 grandkids. You all know that, or most of you do, and all of them go to Gresham-Barlow School District. I have one daughter who is a substitute teacher in Gresham-Barlow School District. I have another daughter who went through the application process to be appointed to the school board. So these 2 daughters, these 2 moms of these 7 kids, they are deeply rooted in the Gresham-Barlow School District. So I have a heart for that. Both of them graduated from Gresham-Barlow School District. So just like a mom and a dad, as a grandparent, you look forward to those monumental events that your grandkids have. Unfortunately, Drake, my husband, and I missed the graduation of our very first and oldest grandchild due to COVID. That made the second grandchild graduation that much more important to be sure to go to and to see. I was moved twice, deeply moved twice, at that graduation ceremony at the Rose Quarter. Once, when my grandson, who I wasn't sure was going to graduate, walked across the floor and received his diploma. The reason I wasn't sure is because he has a learning disability that he's been working through this entire time. He graduated. I watched him walk across that stage, and it was wonderful. It was a moving moment. The second time was when I watched the newly appointed superintendent give his daughter, also graduating from Barlow, a diploma. The big hug could not have been more full of love and pride from everybody in that station watching that superintendent do that for his daughter. It was moving to the entire audience. In the profile I read about James Hugh, the superintendent of Gresham-Barlow, he referred to his favorite saying, Ohana. I hope I'm saying that right. I don't speak foreign languages very well. Ohana means family, and family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten. A great saying for someone responsible for 11,500 students. Nobody gets left behind. Please welcome to the podium Barlow Superintendent James Hugh.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here speaking to you. I want to thank the Gresham Chamber of Commerce for the invite this afternoon. I also want to recognize Director Kathy Keithley, who is here supporting myself and the district. So thank you for your service to the district. You know, as I was preparing for this presentation, I thought, what can I share with you that maybe you don't know, but maybe that you know, but you maybe had some questions about. So when James Owens and I had a conversation about this presentation, we kind of thought we would share a little bit about the pandemic, and we would share what's happening within our school districts. I think James actually covered quite a bit of things that happened during the pandemic, and I will agree with my colleague that the last 3 years have been exceptionally hard for all of us in public education, but it certainly has been hard for our entire community. And I am glad that we are on this side of the pandemic, even though I do know that the last couple of years have been very challenging for both our staff, for our students, and for our families. So I'm gonna kind of move my presentation and giving you some general information about the district, about some of the things we're working on, our priorities, and then I will finish up with some information on our 2016 bond that this chamber has so graciously supported and this community graciously supported, a $291 million bond. And then on your tables, we have some flyers that Athena Vadnais and our communications team actually has put together, and you can see a little bit more about some of the information specific to the bond. You talk about a picture speak 1,000 words, right? So if we're looking at this picture of a Gresham High School graduate, the sheer joy on his face knowing that he's about ready to receive his high school diploma. And as Lynn so pointedly pointed out, handing Melanie, our youngest daughter, her high school diploma this last year was probably one of the things I will remember in my almost 32 years in public service, in public education in the great state of Oregon. Every student deserves the opportunity to cross the stage, to be handed their diploma, and to be able to have that moment where they've accomplished something that no one can ever take away. And so that high school graduation is a very important rite of passage for all of our students. And so being able to hand Melanie her diploma was one of those things that I even shared at convocation this year with our staff, is we have to find the joy back in this work. This is exceptionally hard work. There's a lot of dysregulated folks, whether it's the adults or the kids or the community. This community has been divided over various things, and it's important that we come together as a community and think about public education and our schools as that meeting place. Lynn talked about Ohana, about family, and really in our schools, our students need a safe place, our staff needs a safe place to come together and to learn and to grow. This is a little bit of a look of our school district. We're 54 square miles. There is more than one school district in Gresham. There's 3 school districts actually, Centennial, Reynolds, and Gresham-Barlow. And so we actually not just encompass Greater Gresham, but we also encompass Loring and Damascus and the Orient communities. We have 21 schools, 17 being our own schools, and then we sponsor 4 charter schools. And so that enrollment is a little bit high. I will say that during the pandemic, we did lose some students, even though this last year, we actually were up about 450 kids from last year. So our hope is that we can get back to pre-pandemic levels at around 11,600 students by the end of this next year. Our mission and vision is very simple, right? We want to empower and we want to inspire each student. And our vision is the culturally responsive graduates who will thrive in an ever-changing global community. And then here are the 3 goals that our board has moved forward with. That we want to provide effective, high-quality instruction for all of our students. We want to provide a physically and emotional safe place for them to attend, right? And we also want to be prudent resources and make sure that we're spending our money, your money, the community's money appropriately, looking through an equity lens when we're making our decisions. So this is a little bit of a graphic on when I talk about our 3 district priorities. And we're talking about an inclusive culture for our students. We're speaking to instructional alignment, which means making sure that our programs in K-12 schools are all aligned from elementary to middle to high school to additional programming, and then multi-tiered systems of support, which means working with the whole child, both physically, emotionally, within our schools. And so those are some of the words that have come up when we think about our teaching and learning framework and some of the priorities that we have set forward. Okay? Here are our students. So I think Superintendent Owens shared a little bit about the Centennial student population. I'm going to share a little bit about the Gresham-Barlow student population. We speak over 60 languages. We have about 23% of our students that are forever English learners, right? We have 13% of our students with special needs. And then about 50% of our students are free and reduced. Okay? And here's another little breakdown of some of the students and demographics that we serve. And so, when I first started in the district 20 years ago, we actually had students within the district that the demographics was a little bit different than 20 years fast forwarding to 2023, okay? And then here's our learning model. So you'll see this pin that I wear, and sometimes it kind of goes upside down, but this is actually a learning model of, it's a portrait of a graduate. And so we went through a process about 5 years ago under former Superintendent Dr. Catrice Pereira, where we invited some folks to really come in and engage our community around what do we aspire for our students who get a diploma from the Gresham-Barlow School District. So through that process, we looked at a portrait of a graduate. And this portrait of a graduate was really trying to identify those skills necessary for a student to be successful after they receive their diploma from the Gresham-Barlow School District. So I wanted to kind of share a little bit about that with you. So if you can't read it, right, this portion up here, it talks about being responsible creators, being open-minded, critical thinkers, globally aware of the community. Those are some of the characteristics that we were looking forward as we wanted to say, if you graduate with the Gresham-Barlow School District diploma, here's the qualities and characteristics that you're gonna have, right? So a lot of this is kind of education speak, but this is really a chart identifying that we're gonna inspire and empower culturally responsive graduates, right, who will thrive in an ever-changing global community. And this is how we're gonna do that. And then this is a little bit more specifically on how that actually occurs. We're gonna own our learning. Our students are gonna be learner-centered. They're gonna be balanced assessments in helping them to achieve, right? There's gonna be career pathways for them. So not every student is actually gonna go and graduate with a diploma and go to college. Some of them might wanna get a certificate. Some of them may wanna go to Mount Hood Community College and get a 2-year degree, or they might wanna get some additional training, or some folks might wanna go into the workforce. But we wanted to make sure that there's a pathway for all students, whether it's college career, readiness, or into the workforce. Some may even wanna go into the military and serve our country, okay? So one of the things I wanted to share is, because of the pandemic, some of our students really struggled. And, we thought that as we navigated out of the pandemic, that students were actually gonna recover a lot quicker than they actually are. We know that it's gonna probably take us another 2 or 3 years. And in order for us to support our students, we had to look at our summer programming and what we offer during the summer. So I wanted to kind of share this slide, is we really had to reshape or rename what was happening. We were really using a deficit model when we talked a little bit about our students and their struggling, where we're talking about learning loss. And instead of learning loss, we talked about unfinished learning. Students did learn during the pandemic. They may have not necessarily learned exactly what we needed to, but they were actually still learning. They maybe were learning some different things, but we wanted to shift that thinking about learning loss to unfinished learning. We wanted to shift the thinking from remediation to actually acceleration. And then we also wanted to shift our thinking about recovery to renewal. So with that framework in mind, we developed some summer programming which was really going to help our students. And so the summer programming from last summer, 2022, and the summer programming we're looking at this summer is really around accelerating learning for students, particularly in grades K through 8, right? We wanted to make sure that we increased student engagement. We wanted to make sure that, we created a bridge for those that were going from elementary to middle school and middle school to high school. And then we certainly wanted to offer a robust program for our high school students, whether they were needing to be on track for their graduation, or some that needed some additional support to get to that, cross that finish line. In our elementary and our middle schools, we wanted to really focus this in some areas around K4. We had some schools, Hall and Kelly Creek, where we offered both enrichment as well as academic support. We have Sun Schools, which is Schools Uniting Neighborhoods, that is a partnership with Multnomah County, and we wanted to make sure that we provided some robust opportunities for our students to remain engaged so that the unfinished learning was less than what it would be if they did not do anything during the summer. So we had 3 two-week sessions. And then for our middle schoolers, 5 through 8, we had 2 locations at Clear Creek and at Gordon Russell, and we had another 3 two-week sessions that really supported both academic and some transitional supports as well as accelerated learning opportunities. And then at our high schools, Sam Barlow, Gresham High School, and even Springwater Trail, and we also utilize the Center for Advanced Learning, which is our regional partner that Centennial is also involved in. We use that as opportunities to really support our students as well, from our newcomers that are students new to this country, as well as Jumpstart U that happened at Cal. So for any freshmen, incoming freshmen, we wanted to support them if they wanted to come and participate in some summer learning. They earned a half a credit for high school, as well as they started transitioning earlier into the high school environment. So this is who we actually served in our schools. If you're a numbers person and you want to see the number of kids that we supported in 2022. And then here's some pictures from some of the learning opportunities this summer. So masks were optional, right? But some of our students still utilize masks. Some of our staff utilize masks, but they were still learning, they were in attendance, and they were having a great time. Then in our elementary schools, they were actually themed learning opportunities. And so, you know, bugs were something very famous. And then actually NASA was really famous. And so there were kind of, you know, space camp kind of environments that kids could learn about, right? And then here's our Jumpstart. And actually, Jumpstart U, this logo is actually pretty popular. The students actually developed it at the Center for Advanced Learning. But this is something that we're going to continue with because we believe it's important for students to have opportunities to really get a jump start on their high school careers. So we had some rising 9th graders that got to participate, and they got to look at different clusters of career pathways, and then they also earned the high school 0.5 elective credit. And then there's just more picture of the Jumpstart U. So last portion of the presentation, I want to talk a little bit about our bond. So again, thank you to the Chamber for your support in the bond passing in 2016. I was actually the deputy superintendent in the district. Jim Schlochter was our superintendent at the time, and I can remember about a year and a half before that, we actually went after a bond, and the bond was actually less, and the bond did not pass. So a year and a half later, after a lot of knocking on doors and a lot of talking to community members and engaging community members, I think Mr. Owens mentioned Bess Wills. I remember having conversations with Bess Wills about the bond and potentially what that would mean to the community and to our taxpayers and to our business community. So I will say humbly thank you for your support in passing the bond in 2016. It was a $291 million bond. And I can say that we made full utilization of every dollar. Not only did you pass the $291 million bond, but the district also earned about $54 million in proceeds from that bond that we were able to add value to our community and spend almost $344 million in this community. And so we're in a position where we're just about finished with our bond. On your table, you see some of the pictures. But I want to say we were on budget and on time, and that's not necessarily easy to do. The first picture is of East Gresham Elementary School. And how many of you know the old East Gresham Elementary School? Like I do, right? My two kids went to East Gresham, the old building. This actually looks nothing like the old East Gresham, but it's still an amazing facility. And so we were able to build actually 2 new elementary schools, both East Gresham and North Gresham elementary schools. But here's a picture of Gresham High School, the inside of Gresham High School. Each one of our buildings, right, there was something done, multiple things done in the buildings, safety and security, gymnasiums. Actually, this gymnasium actually wasn't part of the original bond, but with the vision of our school board a few years back, they agreed that, you know, we probably needed to update Gresham High School's gym as well, since we were taking care of other things. And so Gresham High School has a beautiful new gymnasium, a new weight facility. That's Sam Barlow High School. I was principal at Sam Barlow High School from 2004 to 2010. This is not the Sam Barlow High School that I remember. Right? Go Bruins is right. But that's the front of the school. It is so beautiful. You walk in there and there's just a lot of open spaces. There's a lot of areas for students to congregate. It's 21st century learning at its finest. This is our new North Gresham building. How many are familiar with the old North Gresham building, right? I mean, I love the old facilities, but the new modern facilities is just wonderful. This is some indoor classroom spaces. You know, classrooms are bigger, brighter, and they have more than one outlet in the rooms, right? The library is usable for multiple things. There were basically 3 things that we wanted to focus during the bond, right? And this was in kind of the bond title. We wanted to improve safety and security. Our buildings have vestibules. We have updated security cameras. We made sure that, you know, like when I was at Barlow, there were 55 doors that could open and close at any one time, right? At our high schools right now, both schools have 4 doors that are secure. And so it's just a big difference from what we had and what we actually have today. We also wanted to renovate and remodel, right, our aging school facilities. Gresham High School is over 100 years old. And so to be able to have updated learning facilities for our students and for our staff has been wonderful. And then finally, we wanted to expand student opportunities, so we created additional CTE spaces. And again, 21st century learning spaces that allow students to collaborate more and for students to be able to have, you know, 21st century spaces. We wanted to expand those student opportunities. What the teacher on the left is doing is using, you know, a smart board, and where they can use their laptop to project, and they will project on that smart board where students and staff can actually utilize that as a learning tool. And all these 21st century learning tools, they're not necessarily cheap, but they are helping our students keeping up with the global society. You know, we're actually talking to students about jobs that haven't been created. So to have 21st century tools and technology to be able to learn from is going to be a game changer for them as they look for jobs in the future. Again, classroom spaces is just bright and airy, making sure that we have, you know, updated HVAC systems so that the air quality is, you know, to a specific standard is all huge. Deep Creek, Hall, Hollydale improvements. Again, every school was touched in a positive way by this bond, whether there were HVAC systems, new playgrounds, remodeled classrooms. One thing that we've done in majority of our schools is, while I like carpet, in the halls there are polished concrete, and polished concrete is a lot easier to maintain and is actually the industry standard today. And so if you walk in our halls, you'll see a lot of polished concrete. It looks very shiny, like you're gonna slip, but the surface and the quality of the floors are meant for that to last a long time. So again, I wanted to kind of end my presentation and say thank you to the Chamber for supporting the bond, and thank you to the community. A $291 million bond over the last several years. There was enough vision from our school district to be able to purchase some things prior to things getting too expensive, and that's the reason why we've been able to look at $54 million additional to spend. So on your tables you have that. If you want to take that, it gives you a little bit of information of our bond, and I thank you very much for allowing me the few minutes.
So, gentlemen, if you'd both like to come on stage so you can answer the questions. James from Gresham-Barlow. I'm glad to hear that the bond money is not finished being spent yet, because I'm waiting for the cushions on the Gresham-Barlow Stadium, you know, in the gym, and at Barlow and at Gresham, because I have probably 6 years of basketball to go through. That's a lot of
sitting down.
That's a lot of sitting down. So I'm glad to hear that that money hasn't been totally spent yet. So, question from anybody? Leslie, you're first. You're closer.
Just curiosity on what's going to happen with West Gresham.
That's a great question. So I will say that we are looking at a multitude of options. We had decided that West Gresham wasn't going to be able to be used for students any longer, but as we started looking at some shifts and changes in the needs, particularly after the pandemic and the future, we are looking at that facility as meeting the needs of continued district facility improvements over the next several years. I guess I can't really speak to it because we haven't shared with our board yet what we would like to do. The board is appraised.
Never good to get before your board.
The board is appraised that we're going to need to use West Gresham for something. Currently, we actually have staff there. We have some of our coaches there, instructional coaches. We have some of our administrators there. And we do have some emerging needs and needing facility spaces as we move forward. But as soon as we make that decision and then we talk to the board and they approve that, I would imagine folks will know, but we will be continuing to use West Gresham at some capacity.
Okay, question?
Is that fair, Kathy? Okay.
I want to first applaud Centennial on your equity audit and taking the initiative on that. Question regarding that, is that going to be transparent and made public? And then also, does Gresham have plans, or is there already something in the works for Gresham to have the equity audit as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we're in the process of doing the equity audit. So some of our schools have finished at this point. Some are still to come, and then they're going to move into the district level and do a full audit of the district level as well. As far as the results, basically what you get from that is a 48-page or so summary of information as far as accolades and accomplishments and kudos, but then also specific actionable recommendations. And we intend to make those transparent for folks as well. And they need to be, because that's how you're going to gain traction with your efforts, is to be able to make what you're doing visible so that people are able to see where the strengths are and where they need to grow as well. So, good question.
So last year, in my first year as superintendent, we actually engaged in an equity audit for our community. And so we're a little bit further along in the process. We shared that information with our board last spring, and then we developed a 3-year inclusion plan, and we're in year 1. And so we actually will be sharing kind of the results of how are we doing in year 1, what has gone well, what are things that we need to improve on, and then looking at some of the strategies and in year 2 that we want to continue with. Our equity audit is actually on our district website. It's about 68 wonderful pages. And I will be honest, it was a little hard to hear because when we interviewed over 1,600 folks, right? And we heard from our students that they're not necessarily having the very best and most positive education in our school district. As somebody who's lived in the community for over 25 years, in my 20th year in the district, right? And having kids that have gone to the schools, it's been a different experience for my own children. So to hear that some of our students have been struggling has just been eye-opening. And so we're transparent with the board, we're sharing the information, we're working as a staff to really working hard to make sure our students are having a positive experience, and when they're not, we're asking questions, we're engaging our community, we're engaging our students. And so, in full transparency, that's the first place to start. We actually have an equity, policy that we implemented about 2016, but from the policy to actual practice, that's where we're feeling that we need to do some improvement on. But
Michael, I'm sorry.
No, good.
Good morning, class of '72, Eagles. Yes. So more so a comment and a question. So with the Centennial boundaries. I applaud you for defending your turf against North Clackamas area out there, so maybe you want to speak to that a little bit then. And then also, I applaud both of you for passing levies. The city of Gresham has a potential of passing a levy lately, so maybe you could educate the people that are trying to pass that levy on your successes. And I think the one with the Gresham-Barlow was you listened to the community when the first one failed. And I think West Gresham Grade School was one of the pivotal ones. And so anyway, comment. So if you could talk to us a little bit about
Yeah, and I'm going to be very careful about how I speak to this. And I live in that area too, so I'm familiar with it. It's the Scatters Mountain area. And if you're familiar with that area, it's an interesting dynamic because of the way that the boundaries are drawn and the topographical pieces of that, where there's a boundary line that basically cuts on the top of a hill. So we end up needing to send Centennial school buses through North Clackamas, up Clatsop, down 147th, up Jackson Hills, where it's North Clackamas until you get to the top of the hill where it's Centennial School District. If they were able to open the street and there's a gate on the back side, we would be able to have a contiguous access to those students. But as it is, it's interesting the way that it works out. There was a developer about 4 or 5 years ago who was developing the top end of that Scatters Mountain development and had wanted for North Clackamas to be able to annex that portion of land to be in North Clackamas. And so our board chair and vice chair at the time were able to provide testimony and some public pressure with the Clackamas City or Clackamas County Council with respect to maintaining and holding our turf, and as it stands, that continues to be Centennial jurisdiction, and we proudly serve the students who are there. So thanks for referencing that, and I wanted to provide a little context to the comment.
We have a question over here.
So I don't have a student in either one of your districts, but as a mom of a special needs son, this is something close to my heart. For your high schoolers, do you have a vocational program, and how do you get the word out of what the opportunities are to each and every one of your students, make sure that they know what's available?
So in the Gresham-Barlow School District, we have a college and career kind of center where students have access to come in and take a look at all the different opportunities, whether it's job related or career related or college related. We have counselors in each of our schools that help share the information out to our students. Since we have a regional charter, which is the Center for Advanced Learning that Centennial, Reynolds, and Gresham-Barlow participate in, there's opportunities because there are different fields that they can go into, whether it's health occupations, whether it's, having to do with podcasting or manufacturing. Each of our different high schools actually have different career pathways, and so we have multiple pathways that we actually have information that is shared at the schools. We have a CTE coordinator in our district that really makes sure that they're working with middle schools so that students know well before they go to the high schools what kind of opportunities are available. And I do know in the past, and I'm going back a few years when I was a principal, we actually worked really closely with Mount Hood to do some kind of collaboration around the programs that Mount Hood offers and what Gresham-Barlow offers. And I know that Dr. Scari and myself have at least had one brief conversation about bringing something like that back, more opportunities for our school district and the community college, since it's in our backyard, to do a lot more collaboration.
Did you want both of them to answer your question, or was that?
I'll keep it succinct, and I'll echo a lot of what Superintendent Hugh mentioned, so I won't repeat ground, but I'll say a couple of things. Number one, we provide 10 programs of study in career and technical education. In fact, that was one of the elements that I was thinking about presenting on today, but was sort of limited by time and what we'd agreed to speak about. But it's something that I think is probably important to this audience to hear how we're preparing our students for the workforce. A lot of the same strategies in terms of college and career coordination, our counselors, and then at the middle school level, really trying to bolster the opportunities at that level as well. Middle schools have been stripped of a lot of things over the years in terms of opportunities, and we're really trying to build that back with the student investment account funds and the Measure 98 high school success funds that have been received in more recent years. And I will say one more thing, which is our graduation rate as a district is 75.8%. It's not nearly where we want it to be, but if you are taking one of those career pathways that I mentioned, you're in the 90th percentile in terms of graduation. And if you've taken just 2 courses, you're 80% or higher likelihood. So having those possibilities and relevant instructional coursework is super important for our students and able to increase their likelihood of graduation.
Continuing, the Work Ready program as the third leg of the stool is also a critical element to the future and success of the students. Kathy?
And just following Michael, go Gophers the year sometime after him. And speaking to his point about a community involvement, particularly for the bond, you did that in a very specific way, and that was you convened a committee that was solely focused on the bond. So my question is, did you have that in 14, and how significant was that to getting the bond passed? And I wonder if Centennial had a committee like that too for theirs.
Yes, we did have a committee prior to asking voters to support a bond in 2014. I think that, sometimes the devil's in the details, and I don't know if we exactly got it correct. I will say that from my perspective, there was an interest to provide a lot more dollars to one side of our attendance area than the other, that I think ended up not being a really positive outcome for the district in 2014. And I think through listening to our community and saying, we really need to have a bit better balanced approach on how we're spending monies within the district, I think that was something that had helped us. And then knocking on doors and really engaging with a lot of stakeholders that in 2014 we didn't. So you learn, and I think it's similar. I think there was a question that Michael asked around, that the city is going after some money to support health and safety. that, we talk about a community. If you want a livable community, you want a great community, you have to have great schools. You also have to have a great city. You need to have a safe city. And it does mean that, here in Gresham, we actually enjoy a lower tax rate than a lot of other communities. So from my vantage point, like as a school district, we want to make sure that when we ask the community for monies to support supporting all of our schools, that now we're done, we still have a vested interest in making sure that our community continues to be a great community. We do need police, fire, and other emergency supports in the community. So from my vantage point, it's connected, even though I do know that, I have to be careful what I actually do say up here, because I am.
It's also recorded.
I'm a superintendent of schools, but I've already stated what I stated.
You're a citizen of the city.
I am a citizen of the city.
I'll make my response on this question quick, but what I'll say is the Long Range Facilities Planning Committee was super important in terms of having a community voice in terms of what was being put on the ballot for the bond. We hadn't passed a bond in 20 years in Centennial School District. We ran a bond in 2016. That bond did not pass. Upon reflection of that, it's probably better that it didn't because of the package that we were able to put together. I think Superintendent Hughes spoke to the fact that a lot of the dollars in the 2016 bond were concentrated in one part of our community to build a middle school on the Foster property that we have. If you know that gnarly intersection on 172nd and Foster, Centennial owns the land right there that's undeveloped. And the plan at that point was to build a new middle school. Well, our enrollment has been declining over the last 10 years. We were at 6,500 students. We're at 5,800 now. Pandemic, we had an enrollment drop, but that's not the only reason. We have an increasing enrollment in our developable area, but on the north side of our district, a lot of folks age in place and don't have kids in school, and so there's an interesting dynamic. So when we had a facilitator come out of DLR architecture firm to look at our long-range facility plan and help facilitate that process, one of the findings was you can accommodate your current level of students and projected level of students over the next 10 plus years in your current facilities if you rework how the facilities operate, which is why we turned an elementary school into a middle school. So I think it was a better exercise of resources for the community to do the bond that we ended up passing in 2020 than if we had done it in 2016. And I think that community process, my belief is that the cream will rise to the top if you get the proper process in place. The best solutions will rise if more people are involved in the discussion, and I think that's what happened in our subsequent bond.
I could remember a government affairs meeting, and Centennial came to make a presentation, and they'd done all their homework, and what they showed us was all these terrible, ugly pictures of the facilities, and one that they kept hammering was, look at all the mold on this, look at all the mold on this, look at all the mold on this. And I said, you're not going to pass something with mold. And you'll notice that when James did his presentation, the #1 area on that was safety. Safety was in the minds, even though you didn't have to worry about safety necessarily, safety was in the hearts and the minds of the parents, not mold. And it was needed and necessary, and you got it. But safety's what passed the levy. So wasn't this wonderful? Isn't it great that they both, James and James, were here? We have a few changes coming up in our Business and Leaders Luncheon. Next month, there will not be a Business and Leaders Luncheon, and that's because we have the Business Excellence Awards, the largest business celebration this side of both rivers. And it's the event of the month. It happens the same week as our normal BLT. So come, save the date. It's Thursday the 23rd. It's a fabulous celebration. I'll cry just like I did at the ceremony when James hugged his daughter. It's a wonderful celebration. So skipping March 23rd, the following month, the Business and Leaders Luncheon, there'll be a location change. We're not going to have it here at Persimmon. We really appreciate, and we appreciate Emily and everything that she's done, but we're moving to a new location. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I want to see if you read your newsletters and see if you show up. And I'm going to have somebody here waiting for you that day to see what happens. So watch for the new location. In April, we have the city levy conversation, and in May, we have mounted community college. So we've got it booked up. It's going to be so fun the next couple of months. So thank you again to Aero Sanitary, Columbia Bank, Portland General Electric, Persimmon Country Club, the Boeing Company, Gresham-Barlow School District, MetroEast Community Media, and each one of you for giving up your day, your hours, your profit, whatever it is that you've given up for today to be with us. Thank you all for coming. Go forth and make profit. See you later. Bye.